All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We still have a couple of people that are going to be joining us as we go through today, but we want to get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us as we talk about the concept today of cybersecurity. Someone else in.
I'm going to share my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just get this toolbar. Toolbar really gets in my way. All right, there we go. All right, so yeah, as Parker said, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity today. And we have a lesson that we're going to share for you like we did last time. Welcome, everyone, again.
So what we want to do for our opening, a welcoming activity, is we want to do one of those waterfalls or cascading activities where you guys will answer the question in the chat, but you will not hit enter until I tell everybody to. So what we want everybody to do is just take a look at the question that we have on the screen. So one thing I have changed in my thinking when planning lessons or activities. So we want you guys to think of one thing that you've changed in your thinking when you're planning lessons and activities that has to do the thinking when it comes to not cybersecurity, but just the digital standards that we've been going over. So we're going to give you guys about 2 minutes to just type it in the chat. What is one thing you have changed in your thinking when planning lessons or activities? And then just don't do anything until I tell you, and we're all going to hit enter at the same time. Any questions? All right, start typing, thinking and typing, please. And then for those of you who just joined us, we're answering this question in the chat, but do not hit enter. All right, so we're just waiting about 30 seconds. Please do not hit enter because we're going to hit enter at the same time. And if you did, no worries. I understand. It's instinct. We're all used to that. I do it all the time. All right, so get ready to hit enter, and I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1, enter. Look at that waterfall. Wonderful. And just take a minute to kind of go up and just look at some of the responses. Take a second to look at some of the responses.
Some great responses.
Yeah, definitely. Very thoughtful responses. Very nice, guys. It's definitely nice. It's nice to see these thoughts that you guys have all had and these thoughtful responses. It really shows that you are all really thinking about these standards and not just how do I hit these standards, but how can I integrate them in a meaningful way into my lessons and activities. So that's awesome. Really cool. Thank you guys for sharing. So our learning targets for today are I can integrate cybersecurity standards into plugged and unplugged activities. And then I can align a cybersecurity standard to Bloom's.
All right, so we have a couple updates. Just so you know, I am updating the webinar or our Google Sites with the webinars, the recordings, and any additional resources that we have added to our webinars, to that webinar page on the Google Sites. And so the recordings on there for each of the last 4 that we've done, and then today's will be popped on there after the last session. So after next week's session, I'll add the recording from today. If you haven't been able to attend all of the sessions live and are viewing the recording and the form that goes along with that, make sure you please register for the event, or else I have to kind of like hunt down who didn't and then make sure you get the link to register for that. Because I put the link in the frontline description, a lot of people I think are just clicking on the link and going with that, but you have to actually officially enroll because we want to make sure for one that you get your CTLE credit as well as your stipends for that. So make sure that you're signed up for that. And then, so the grant officially ends March 31st. However, when we first applied for the grant, it was supposed to go until June, and they changed that when they approved all the grants. So what we're doing is, first of all, we're increasing the stipend for portfolio submission, and we're giving you until end of May to get all of your portfolio done. But what we need to do is we need to have everyone submit their portfolio with 2 lessons aligned to the new standards by March 18th. And if you do it by March 18th, we'll be able to submit for a stipend for you for $150. And then when you submit the rest of your portfolio on May 27th, you'll get another $100 stipend. So we just want to make sure we're giving you total, you're going to get $250 stipend. We're trying to get as many, we're trying to do like a good faith effort where if you submit 2 lessons aligned on your portfolio by March 18th, then, you know, you'll continue working on it and then you'll be able to submit the rest of your portfolio at the end of May. We're trying to kind of fit within the guidelines of the grant, but giving you some extra time, and they're allowing us to do that so that it will work for this year. So we will send out reminders and we will make sure everybody knows and tell you exactly how we want you to send us your link. A lot of people have been sending us links already to test to make sure that everything is shareable. That's great, because then we can let you know if we can view things or not. And that's been going very well. Some people have already submitted some of their lessons for us to look over and give them feedback on. That's absolutely fine. But because we are having it, you know, kind of split up that way, we're changing the focus of March's webinars. So in March, we were going to have like an 2 webinars that were going to be about like completing your portfolio. What we're going to do is we're going to do 4 open office hours at 3 hours a piece from March 3rd to March 17th. So we'll send out those dates and times for you to sign up. And you can, Parker and I will be there. You can just pop in and ask us a question. You can share something with us. We can go over something that you have questions about alignment. We can go over how you build your portfolio, anything like that. But we'll have on March 3rd, March 8th, March 5th, and March 17th, 3 hours on each of those days that are going to be open for you guys to come and join the webinar, and just open office hours where you can ask any questions.
So a couple of things. If you guys were asking for you to submit by March 18th, a minimum of 2 lessons. If you have more, that's okay. Like if you happen for some reason have your portfolio done, you can submit it then. You know, so you can feel free, if you have more than that done, submit what you have done. It's just a minimum of 2 lessons already done by March 18th. And then again, I just so everyone's very clear about the office hours. It's, yes, you have to sign up, but it's pop in and pop out type situation. So it's not, no one's going to be in the, I mean, unless you want to and have a lot for us to go over, no one's going to be in there for 3 hours. And you technically, correct me if I'm wrong, Doreen, you don't have to come.
Right. This is
so
completely up to you.
If you feel that, you know, I have a good handle on this and I can submit what I would need to submit by the 18th and then have it submitted by the end of May for the rest of it, feel free. That is okay. We just wanted to give you guys a specific amount of time that we will be available to answer your questions as you have them. Because right now, obviously, after the webinars, after March, if you have questions, email us. And we're not going to be like, well, I'm sorry, it's not my office hours. No, we're still gonna be able to help you guys and look at things. This is just more of immediate feedback kind of us working with you on some questions that you have at that moment.
And depending on the need, we might add some office hours for May
Sure.
as well, depending
Sure.
on if we find that we're getting a lot of questions or something like that, we might add some for May. So some people have already registered for the March webinars. I'm not going to be able to edit the time and dates of those in Frontline because people have already registered for them. So I'm going to cancel them and I'm going to create new ones, and I'll send out all the links for the new ones for you to join, because the Zoom links will be in there. And that way, you know, with Parker and I both being there, like if 2 or 3 people are in, I could pop into a breakout room with 2 people and Parker could work with the other one in the main meeting. So we'll, you know, be able to work with, you know, people as they come in. And that way, you know, we can answer your questions as you're getting your 2 or more lessons ready to submit by the March 18th date. And I'm going to type this up in our follow-up email so that you have all the dates, and we are staggering the times like we do with the webinars now. So we're going to have like a 4 to 7 time frame and a 5:30 to 8:30 time frame. So what, you know, we're trying to accommodate what your hours, you know, what you might need, because after school clubs or sports or things like that. So, you know, we'll let you know the exact dates, times, and registration links. And then of course, as we get closer to that initial due date for the portfolio, we'll send a reminder out about that as well. And we still have February's webinars that are going to go as planned. Those are the digital literacy webinars. Any questions about that? We've been waiting to tell you because we had to get approval from all the districts to increase the stipend. And we wish we could increase it even more, because we know that this is a lot of work that you're doing, but we have to be able to continue this policy throughout the next 4 years of the grant. And if we get more people sign up next summer than we did this summer, it might get us in a little fiscal crunch there with the grants. Any questions about that? So, like I said, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, and some people have already been delving into these standards, but just want to go over the sub-concepts. We have risk, we have safeguards and response. Now for risk, the standard statements, that standard document that we had says risk is a combination of vulnerability and likelihood that the vulnerability will be exploited, and the severity of consequences in the vulnerability. I'm sorry, it is important. Let me start that over. Risk is a combination of vulnerability and the likelihood that the vulnerability will be exploited, and the severity of consequences in the vulnerability is exploited. It is important to understand why data and resources need to be protected and how they might be compromised so the correct safeguards can be put into place. When you think about that, when you think about the risk, it's something that definitely is current events, right? I mean, we all are experiencing these type of things either personally, or we're hearing it on the news, or we're seeing it happening in a global, in the global market as well. So thinking about that. And then when we have safeguards, programmers and individuals must know how to protect their data and computing resources with common safety measures. When combined, various physical, digital, and behavior precautions can create a level of digital security. Now, when we first were creating these standards, the digital literacy area had numerous standards. And as they went through the reviewing of these standards and talked to different stakeholders, they shifted some of those digital literacy standards out of digital literacy and into cybersecurity and into impacts of computing. And you'll see that there's a very even amount of standards throughout each of the concept areas. And they wanted to make sure that they were aligned appropriately and tied with other standards that made sense. So these risk safeguards and responses make sense to be in the cybersecurity area. And then for response, when a security breach occurs, individuals must decide what actions to take. This takes into account what type of breach occurred and how to improve security moving forward. I got an alert on my phone the other day that my email I use all the time, my personal email, had a compromised password. So I'm like, okay, I got to go in and change that. So that would be my response to learning about my, my security breach on my email. And that's something that I think is going to be a part of our lives going forward, having these type of issues. So it's really important that our learners understand the risk, what safeguards they can take, and then how they can respond if there is some type of breach on their information. So we did create a lesson, and this is actually a habitats lesson, and it is tied to a particular curricular area. We also found some resources that are specifically cybersecurity lessons from Common Sense Education that we're going to share with you as well, just to show you how we can have one aligned to content, which would be the Habitats content for the elementary grade level. And then how, if you want to just straight out teach cybersecurity, there's some lessons at your fingertips for that. But I'm going to show you the example lesson first. And for this lesson, this is grade 2. Let me just make it a little bigger here. And I have my learning objectives and the student ICANN statements and how it's adapted for students with disabilities and ALS students. These are the science standards that it's aligned to. And I've aligned it to cybersecurity and some digital literacy standards. I'm going to focus obviously on the cybersecurity. For the portfolio, we have it that you need to hit 2 of the subconcept areas. And I'm going to be upfront with you. This lesson only hits 1 of the subconcept areas. Cybersecurity is one that is a little different to be aligning to content areas, unless you're specifically teaching something about data breaches and in those type of things. So this one can be a little bit of a stretch. And for the scope of the grant, we want you to have a fluency with all the concept areas and all the subconcept areas. So that's why we're asking that you're aligning your lessons. But some of you work with others, right? You might be a curriculum leader, or you might be an instructional technology specialist or a librarian, where we, Debbie and I had this conversation with some other people in the grant this morning, where for the scope of the grant, we want you to align to all the standards and subconcept areas that we've aligned in the portfolio. But when you're thinking about, let's say you're a science teacher, a high school science teacher or a middle school science teacher, you might not be aligning these to your content all the time, right? We're going to have to develop some type of scope and sequence in our districts where we know exactly which grade level, which curricular area, which teacher is going to be aligning these standards to their content. And it might not obviously fit if you're working with a team of people saying like, oh my gosh, now we've got to add this cybersecurity into our math lesson. That's not going to make sense for my math lesson or for my biology lesson. So thinking about that for the grant purposes, we want you to, because we want you to really think about these and have a fluency with these. But if you're like a curriculum leader and you're thinking, oh, well, for my science teachers, this doesn't make sense. We agree with that. We know that's going to happen. We know that every single one of these standards is not going to be able to be aligned to every single curricular area K-12. We know that. But we want you to get the fluency with them. That's why we're having you interact with them during the scope of the grant. Does that make sense to people? Okay. So obviously I have my my computer science and digital fluency standards here, and then I have the SEL benchmarks. For this particular lesson, students have been learning about the habitats, and we're going into deeper discussions about it. I have them watching a video. I have technology integrated throughout this lesson, but I've also adapted. I have paper copies, I have adapted copies for students who might need like a word bank or something like that, or some additional help. And then the actual lesson is, the actual alignment to the standard is the decoding activity. So with cybersecurity, there is a part of the standard for this particular one, CY.4, where it does talk about, having students decode a sentence, or have students create a sentence for somebody else to decode. So that's what I've done with this particular lesson. And we're going to give you some time to look at that. And then with the presentations, I've aligned the digital literacy standards, where the students are creating a presentation, either a slideshow or a PowerPoint, or they're going to have options to do a paper one as well. And then students are reflecting using a form or a paper copy if they need it. I've linked everything in here. I've created folders. I've added additional activities if somebody wanted to do something, go even deeper. I've used Safari Montage and Brain Pop Junior for the videos. So I'm trying to integrate technology. So I probably could have aligned more of the standards, but I've also wanted to make sure that I did get that decoding activity in here. And this is for young students. So I didn't do like a Caesar cipher or something like that. That would be more too complicated for this age group, but it is getting them in those first steps of learning how to decode and using those critical thinking skills that decoding something would take in order to accomplish this activity. Any questions about the lesson that we're sharing? So what we're going to have you do is, so we're going to break you out into, we're going to put you into breakout rooms, and just looking, I want you to look specifically at that decoding activity. I just gave you the answer, but to look at how it was created and look at some of the other resources. There is a magnifying activity in there that Parker and I felt, yeah, this is using technology into this lesson, but it's not really decoding or coding anything, but just something for you to look at and see how we've added technology into this lesson. But we want you just to look at it, come back with any feedback and questions, fill out this form like you have with the other lessons that we've gone over during our breakout sessions. And then we'll go from there. Does anybody have any questions? Excuse me.
The first link I gave you guys is the document that you're going to be writing in. So only one person in each group needs to have that. And then the next link I'm giving you is the lesson plan. So right here is the lesson. The second link is the lesson. The first link is the document. So everyone should probably look at the lesson and click on that link. And only one person in each group needs to really be on the feedback.
Right. So make sure you have somebody typing in there for us, and then somebody who might want to be your group spokesperson when we come back. All right, everybody all set? I'm going to open up the breakout rooms.
A short series of lessons so that there's some kind of, so it can be used, right? So
yeah, and I totally get your point. And I would hope that somebody would look at your lesson. They would see, first of all, the content standards, and then look at the New York State Computer Science and Digital Fluency standards and see, okay, so they did this part of this unit that is part of the New York, it's aligned to the standards, and I can see where it fits within perhaps this unit I'm doing. But I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it's impossible for us to, or for you guys to, like, just do one unit of study and do all those different lessons and hit all the standards. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't think that's a feasible ask of you.
No, and that's not really what I was getting at. Like for instance, I was telling, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but I don't want to take up time from this meeting, but like on Thursday, I'm going to do a lesson that is a skill-based lesson on sharing files. So what does it mean to share files? What do you have to think about when you're sharing files? How do you physically do that? And I'm doing that because I'm going to have my students collaborate and write a story.
Okay.
So But the lesson itself, the stuff that we're doing about sharing, anyone could use that. That is, hey,
Right.
here's a lesson, here's an activity, there's going to be a template for students. That's a standalone thing. I'm about to start a science unit on the impact of wolves on the ecosystem in the Yellowstone National Park that we do in Pittsford as a third grade unit. And in that unit, we do a lot of modeling and we do a lot of flow charting and things of what happened with that ecosystem. That lesson absolutely falls into some of the work that we're doing with these standards, but by itself, like no one's going to randomly like, oh, hey, here's this lesson on, you know, diagramming the ecosystem. Like that's not going to be meaningful to anybody besides my colleagues here. So I just want to spend my time wisely. And I mean, I'm doing the lessons either way, so it doesn't matter. I just was trying to figure out how they were being used so I would know where to focus.
I would say, think about your purpose first, right? Think about what's going to best suit you. I mean, we will be sharing these lessons regardless, but because the state hasn't given us any other direction than saying we need to share the lessons, think about yourself first and what you need to do to make sure that you understand the standards, integrate them into the learning. So either lesson to me sounds great, or both lessons added to your portfolio, but anything beyond the scope of like sharing it out and creating units and having it sync to a database, they have not talked to us about anything like that at all. And I'm sure they're so short staffed. I don't even think they're probably even thinking about creating something like that, unfortunately, because it would be great to have it very comprehensive that way. But I know just with experiences with other grants that I've worked with them, it just hasn't happened.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. Yes, I did put the recording back on. I'm actually not going to share my screen because you guys have access to the document, but who is in group 1 and would like to share? Actually, I will share it. I'm sorry. I have a cold and I'm not thinking clearly.
I'm Michelle McDermott, William Donahue, and Ellen was in my group.
Okay.
So the elevator pitch, we just, in a nutshell, the students are learning about various habitats and comparing and contrasting those habitats and then working together to share their learning. And we just found that the CY4 standard to encode and decode, that aligns with the decoding activity, which is towards the bottom of the instructional steps. It was a link to an unplugged activity for decoding that kind of went along with that standard. And then the other two standards both aligned with the students choosing a presentation tool, whether it's Google Slides or PowerPoint, with their small group and using that to create and present their learning to their class.
Excellent. Okay, group 2.
So we kind of came to a similar conclusion as far as like the activities and how they align with the standards. Effectively, like the cybersecurity fell under that decoding activity where kids are using like pictograms to decode a message and find their answer. And then digital literacy was covered through their interactions with each other and using like their different software for presentation methods. And so our pitch was just that students will collaborate to identify habitats, their effects on flora and fauna, as well as how habitats differ from one another.
Excellent. Thank you. Group 3.
We just basically said the same thing. I mean, the decoding activity was for the cybersecurity standard, and the small group presentation with the Google Slides was for the other two in the collaborating.
Group 4.
Pretty much the same thing other people have been saying. The decoding activities were really cool. It was neat that they were aligned to 7 different habitats, and so they could have multiple attempts to practice. And then the presentation aligned with the digital literacy standards.
Thank you. Group 5.
Our elevator speech was that students study habitats and what it takes to keep the live things within that habitat healthy and alive. And some of the activities that children were being asked to do align with the standard of cybersecurity, the lesson is subtly aligned with the standard when it comes to decoding. We had some discussion about how is this related to cybersecurity? That it really, the lesson perfectly aligns with the standard, but how does the standard really relate? So we had a little discussion about that before we dug in. Digital tools used in the students' presentations, the template and PowerPoint or Google Slides was 2, 3, DL 2, and 4.
And, Julia, I agree with you. This isn't a cybersecurity lesson, but you're using those critical thinking skills you would use for like decoding. And it's something that, like, as we created this lesson, we investigated, we checked, and we, double checked to make sure that this was a true alignment. It is according to the state. So we said, okay, let's do it. But, we just wanted to make it, we're trying to show you how you can use these standards in different curricular areas. But that was the only one that truly fit with this lesson, the decoding. All right, I'm sorry, what was that? Group 5, so group 6?
Yeah, we did, again, sounding repetitive, but students are learning about various habitats and the animals and plants within them and what they need to survive. As well, we chose CY4, decoding of a short message or phrase. And then because the students were preparing the presentation or a Google slide, getting the choice, we chose DL2, which is by communicating and working with others using digital tools to share knowledge and convey ideas.
Thank you very much. In group 7?
We did, so we kind of, everyone did a great job, doing their elevator pitch. So we kind of summarized it. So our elevator pitch is students are exploring and sharing numerous habitats with help of technology. And the activities, students are deciphering between different animal habitats. Students are communicating with one another when preparing for a presentation. Students also work together to edit, create, and gather artifacts.
Thank you very much. And so for the magnifying one, because Ellen said she couldn't get it to work. So you have to bring the magnifying over and just keep moving it around until you find a word that it will highlight. And then you click on the word and it will bring you to an image of that specific animal. So you just keep sliding it around until the words are revealed. And you'll see the different words of the animals in that particular habitat. All right, let me get back to the presentation. All right, so if you look at this, we use obviously CY 2-3.CY.4, encode and decode a short message or phrase. So for our Bloom's sentence, it's by the end of the decoding activity, students will be able to decode information about their assigned habitat as evidenced by creating a group presentation about their habitat, because they're working together in groups to do the decoding activity, and then they're working together for their presentation. And then when we go on to our portfolio, and I'm going to actually click on this and open it up largely. So this is our portfolio document that we've been building with each lesson that we've been sharing with you. And if I scroll down, as you see, we keep adding to this and it's making it, it's getting very complete. As you can see, for cybersecurity, we have to have a lesson that aligns to a lesson or lessons that align to 2 of any of the subconcept areas. For this one, it only aligns to 1 subconcept in this cybersecurity concept area. So what we have here is our habitat lesson, and it says this artifact meets the standards as students work in collaborative groups to decode information about their assigned habitat in order to deepen their understanding of the topic to create a presentation about their habitat. And then at the end, I just put on that Bloom's sentence. By the end of the activity, students will be able to decode information about their assigned habitat as evidenced by creating a presentation about their habitat. So it's a little repetitive, but I like to keep both of them in there so that I really get in my mind what this is about. And then I've linked the lesson here, and I've linked an example of the student's presentation. A lot of you have sent us emails within the last few days, ever since like Debbie sent out that email showing people how to share your folders with us. That's great. Keep doing that so that we can make sure that we can access your documents, and just make sure that your portfolio document, this document that we have shared with you, the template, you're using this document and you're updating this and sharing that with us in there. Any questions about where we have aligned this? I also would add this to my digital literacy if I needed to have further alignment there as well. So can you remind us where to find the daily learning target template page? That's the Bloom's taxonomy you're talking about. I believe we shared it in, I'll share it out with everybody. I've shared it before, but I don't know if I put it on the website or not. Do you remember, Parker?
I don't think so, but we'll double check to make sure it's on the website, but we'll also send it in the email.
Yeah, I'll put it in the follow-up email.
Follow-up email, yeah. But we'll also make sure it's on the website. I'll double check that, but we'll make sure.
Yeah. So any questions about how I've added the content to the portfolio, how I've added the lessons or the students' activities? And Kelly, are you asking for the Google site address? You said, can you give the website address?
Whatever address you all keep saying, go to this address.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yes, we're supposed to go to.
Okay. So yeah, so that's the Google Sites, and I'll share that. And I try to put that in every email I send out after the follow-ups, but I might have forgotten a couple times. So I'll make sure that you get that.
That's okay. And so it's not a web address, it's a Google address?
It's a Google site, which is a website. It's a,
okay.
So it is a web address. Yeah. Yeah.
So we all have access
yeah.
to it.
Yep. You'll be able to access it. No problem. All right. Any other questions about the portfolio or anything else? Parker, can you write down some of these things so I remember them?
Yeah.
Thanks. So I talked about how here we've curated some lessons from Common Sense Education. They're really great lessons. You can use this site for free. You just need to create a login, and it has the lesson, it has the resources, it has activities, it has some resources you can use for parents. And then this is a link that is, I've added to the slide. I'm sending you guys this entire slideshow, but this is talking about cybersecurity, talking about the cybersecurity field. So that impacts of computing, talking about careers. It can bring in some different career ideas about what learners who might be interested in cybersecurity can get into. We've also created this resource document that has one lesson per grade level that we've taken from Common Sense Media, and I've actually aligned the computer science cybersecurity standards too. So Common Sense Media uses the ISTE standards, but I wanted to make sure that you saw alignment to the cybersecurity standards for New York State. So for each one of these, I've added just the cybersecurity. It might also meet digital literacy. It might also meet impacts of computing or networks and system designs, but I only put in the cybersecurity just so you could see how these lessons align to that. These are specifically very straightforward teaching this cybersecurity content, like keeping your information straight, private and personal information, things that you might get hacked on or something like that. So all of them are specifically for cybersecurity. So it's not like a math, science, ELA lesson. It's a specific technology-based lesson. So there's just some resources here for you to see those lessons in case that's what you want to use with your learners. Any questions about that? So today we have two guest speakers. And let me make it so you can share your screen if you would like to. All participants. So Susan and Paige are going to share. Who wants to go first? Susan, okay, why don't you unmute? I'm going to mute and you can go ahead and.
Alrighty, thank you. My name is Sue Lochner. I'm an 8th grade science teacher. And I want to thank Deb. She helped me quite a bit prepare this lesson. I had submitted it for review. Oopsie daisy, there we go. And then I felt like she gave me so much help that I should share out and talk about the lesson. I'm no Google expert, but at this point in time, or no Zoom expert either. So I'm hoping that you see my Newton's second law lab format. And I'm just going to scroll through and talk a little bit about some rationale before I get started. We teach, as far as content at the 8th grade level, we teach a middle school physics class, and then we teach a high school earth science class, depending on the student. So there are certain skills we like to teach to both, and then try to connect them to content. So this lab is designed for a physics classroom at the 8th grade level. And so we want them to be able to conduct a lab investigation, do some calculations, and then evaluate their data and make some predictions eventually regarding Newton's second law. Now, Newton's second law is all about creating a force on an object. And if you create enough force, you can accelerate it. So the kids have to come in with some background already in things like speed, acceleration, how to compute them. And then they just get their first introduction into what a force is, even though from a general standpoint, they do know what forces are, just before doing this lab. Now, the lab is meant to be more of an investigative kind of an approach. And what we attached to this was a 2-day teaching them how to use a spreadsheet and create a graph. First of all, the spreadsheet allows them to do a calculation that many of the children in the classroom would not be able to do because they do not have the math skills. It also allows them to do numerous calculations without spending any additional class time. Our class periods are short. And when we add a lab into a class period, it really eats up our time. So if we can shorten something like a routine step, like doing calculations, it's a real plus for us. It also allows them to use the spreadsheet as a chart, which they're required to put in their lab, and to create a graph, which they are also required to put into their lab. So these here are middle school standards. So this is the content standard using the older science curriculum. We are in the process of switching, or actually, no, this is the new science curriculum, the NISLA standards. And we have the plan and conduct plus the content-based standard with it. And this is your using models to create simulations and seeing how data will change from group to group, giving them an opportunity to create formulas that will then allow them to compute different functions. And it also provides them with the documentation to go with their lab report. Our feel-good skills, they are working in lab groups. to collect the actual lab data. Although the first 2 days worth of lessons are individualized lessons paired with a partner. So if they fall behind in the instructional piece, or if they find a shortcut or whatever, they're more confident to either ask for help or share something they figured out how to do. We allocate 4 days because this is one of the few labs that all 8th graders do as part of our overall horizontal alignment. And not everyone creates the spreadsheets and graphs. So this is what day 1 would look like, where they learn about what a cell is, how to name a cell. We talk about the difference between putting alpha or numeric characters into a cell, and then what Excel thinks about that. On the second day, then they learn how to create formulas, and then they go from the computed data into creating the graph. So this has the formulas in it, but it isn't a live document, so I can't show you the formulas, but I can move my cursor. They're actually putting equal signs in here, which allows then Excel to know they're typing formulas. And same thing here. The only difference is here, they're adding up these 3 blocks and dividing by 3. And Excel thinks those all have zeros in them. And then over here, to create the acceleration formula, they actually have to divide by some numbers we don't even see here on this chart that were actually controls in the experiment. Now, what we love about this is the kids can visually see the cart slows down. So it's great for the kids because if they put their data in the wrong order, or if they flip their data labels, or if they flip their X and Y variables, anything like that, they create a graph that doesn't look like what they see. And so much of what we're trying to get them to do now as 8th graders is more interpretive. Is this really what happened? And can I explain that the cart is slowing down by making use of the slope of this line? Then it's, again, part of their documentation is going to be listing out the steps they did. This would be like what I would recommend to a teacher to like copy and check off as they do the lessons, including a little bit of task analysis there ahead. The actual lab document is here and shareable, although it is not editable. Makes me feel like someone wants to eat the document, but you cannot edit it. But if for some reason this appealed to anyone, I'd be happy to share with you something you could edit. The lab investigation serves as its own assessment project, especially since in PLC, we would be comparing results, looking to see what kind of data and answers the kids had to questions. Let's see. I love doing the spreadsheet. I've done this for about 14 years. And I love it because the kids have to do it as a 9th grader. I love it because the kids find uses for it I would never think of. It's nice because it's just standard lab equipment and computers, so you don't need anything really very fancy. Peers, when my peers looked at it, in my PLC group, the first thing one of them said to me was, "You're in earth science, you're doing scale diagrams. Why don't you do that with the earth science kids?" So I did, for a completely different set of science standards, same technology standards. I was able to create some very neat looking electronic artifacts that represent the geologic timeline to scale. Same computations, the math was a little simpler, but still learning how to do formulas, learning how to set up a spreadsheet. So I might consider writing that one up too, because I think I might like that better than this. But it has that kind of adaptability and a skill set we want our kids to have. So I'm all set. I'm done.
Thank you so much. That's great that you were able to apply it to another area as well to use in different labs. So I think that's phenomenal, especially because it's skills you want them to have and it will suit the purpose of your lab. So that's great. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome, dear.
All right. So Paige, would you like to share?
Let me stop sharing here. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I am Paige Labar. It just occurred to me that I don't think I've ever introduced myself properly on Zoom because my first and last name are there, and I guess I've just skipped it. But if you don't know me, now you do. I just put a link in the chat with this data set. So it will bring you to a Google Sheets file. You'll get to see the raw data coming in, and it's kind of fun because it's pretty ugly. So I think that's nice to share with students while they're doing this. And basically this is going to be a spreadsheet of a bunch of different data breaches. And then you can see the date that this occurred by just the year alone, or you can see the month and day. You can see a little explanation, the sector. So you can see that it impacts like so many different parts of society. And then there's like a yes or no if it's an interesting story. So I guess that one is a little bit more opinion based. I think depending on who you talk to or what they tell you about it, they're all kind of interesting. But then the fun part with this, so this would definitely be related to cybersecurity because students can see what can happen if things go wrong. You know, there's a lot of data that has either been lost or exposed, much of which, if you look at the sector, it's going to involve personally identifiable information, whether that's financial stuff or, you know, medical information, but lots and lots of companies that people might recognize. And so I don't really know if students would be totally wowed by this format, but not only are they going to get some historical information in a cybersecurity lens, but the fun part that I think you'll want to see is that this has been made into an interactive timeline. So you can go back. It's going to take a while to kind of load on my computer. I say it takes a while. It takes like 4 seconds instead of 0.003 seconds. Anyway, you can see visuals. So I'm going to put that link in the chat now too. So going back to 2004 through 2007, you can see that we don't have a lot of dots here. And then as you move up the page, you'll start seeing more of these data breaches start increasing. The size of the dot is related to the number of pieces of data that were lost. So if you're thinking about, you know, teaching like the radius of a circle, that's going to be applied in a data visualization because we can look at this right now and know that Yahoo must have had something pretty serious happen. 550 million records lost. And then, so this is also a little bit of a social studies connection. You can see some current events, you can see some history. But then if you click on one and you want to read more about it, you can click to read more. It will take you to either like an article or a little description, but overall pretty interesting. And I think if you zoom out and just look at the whole thing, you'll start to see that this is pretty significant in our society. You can also play around with some of the other features in this, but that's just the quick overview. These are events with over 30,000 records that were either impacted or lost. And it's cool because students will recognize something on here. Like one of the more recent ones involved Peloton with bikes, Microsoft. A lot of my students saw the Twitch example in the news. So it will definitely be things that students can connect to. That's pretty much it, just short and sweet, but nice combination of visualizing data and cybersecurity.
Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a great visual.
I got that idea from a teacher from Long Island, and Debbie reminded me about that page this morning. So thank you, Debbie, for that reminder. The fun site.
Any questions for Susan or Paige on their presentations? All right, we're ready for our coaching update, Deb.
Super. Hello, everybody. Great to see everybody and names that I recognize. I'm speaking for both myself and Rich. I know that he and I both reached out to you all right after the break, hoping everybody had a fabulous break and kind of was able to avoid COVID as much as possible. Setting up meetings. So I'm assuming if you are one of on Rich's team, you've been hearing from him. Those meetings are happening. I know on my end of things, they certainly are. Have had some great meetings. And once again, I'm just so incredibly impressed by the work that you all are doing and continue to do. I mean, there's been not one of you, even though I've given you an opportunity to say, I just can't do it. Not one of you that's taken me up on that offer. Instead, you've shared, similar to what Susan and Paige did just now, you know, some of the incredible work. And I just kind of, as a former administrator, think about how wonderful it is that our kids are getting the kinds of experiences that they're getting, that you all are providing for them. So I want to thank you for that. Nuts and bolts from a coaching perspective, I sent out to my team and again shared with Rich, so I'm sure he's probably already shared it with you. Just like a real quick down and dirty how to actually share the files. Parker and Doreen have done a great job kind of talking to you about what goes into a portfolio, but some of you have been asking me about the nuts and bolts about like actually setting up the, I guess it's physical, the virtual physical portfolio itself. And so I've got a cheat sheet. If any of you all want that, I can certainly send it out again. Especially it was designed for the OneDrive environment. I think if you're a Google person, Google Classroom, you kind of get this, but for us OneDrivers, sometimes it might not be quite so intuitive. So I'm looking forward to, again, seeing, you know, if you want to share some of your lessons. Certainly many of you have taken me up on my offer and I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with you. I think that's probably it. The only other thing I would say is, you know, this is kind of our midwinter, middle of the year kind of touch base. I'll be touching base, as will Rich, towards March, probably towards the end of March when your portfolio, when it's time to kind of submit a couple. But in the meantime, if there's anything that you need, there's no, you know, set, it has to be 3 times a year, but rather, you know, if I'm available and you need me, please just let me know and we can work something out. That's it.
All right, so Doreen's muted.
I'm glad you told her that, Parker, because I was dying
I
to.
wanna see how
I'm
long.
thinking she's a seasoned professional. I'm not going to tell her that she's muted.
I wanted to just keep shaking my head up and down like I was hearing what she was saying.
And I'm watching your head thinking, okay, everything's good. Okay, so any questions for Debbie? It's been one of those days. All right, so now we're going on to our optimistic closing. Parker, you want to describe it?
So what I am putting this into the chat. Doreen, can you click on the link for us, please?
Sure.
So this is an A to Z. And what we want you guys to do is, normally what we would do is we would have people in groups and they would go through we would assign people a letter and everyone would go through all of this and do as many letters as they can to put a word that describes the New York State Computer Science and Digital Fluency Standards. We are kind people, Doreen and I, and we're not going to make you guys do that. What we just want you guys to do is we want everybody can just choose one letter and put a word in the box that starts with that letter that describes the New York State Computer Science and Digital Fluency Standards. It's okay if, for example, if 23 people use A, that's okay. You know, if somebody already wrote using that letter, just put a comma and put your word next to it. See you guys going. Good. We'll accept the extraordinary one.
I was just looking at that one. I love it.
I like it. So you guys are gonna get all the letters.
I think so.
I know, I like it. Anyone can come up with a W. That W is an example of 23 people in the same document. All right. Very good, everybody. This was nice. All of this, these are some great words, and we did A to Z. So we'll have to challenge the other group from next week
Yeah.
to see if they can also do it. So nice job, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We really do appreciate you guys giving us your time. So thank you. And like always, like Doreen and I said, Doreen will be sending out, we'll be sending out an email, a follow-up email with some of the information that we talked to you guys about today, and some of the links and things you guys asked for, but also at any time, send us an email and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So we thank everybody for their time.
Have a great evening.
Bye, guys.